And Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Virtual House Church. So glad you could join us here today. Let me just get a few things here organized a little better. Wow. You know what? I need to turn off my VPN, so there might be a glitch. Okay. It says we're still good. I found that the VPN tends to really not play well with OBS, and things happen and I get bounced and whatnot, and the stream just doesn't work very well. But anyway, I think we're good to go here right now. Juan Carlos emailed me, said that he's going to be a bit late, probably join us in the second hour. And I do have Jake with us, but he's looking for some place right now quiet to set up shop. So in the meantime, we'll go through our usual administrative stuff, and that'll give him some time to get situated here. So if you're new to the Virtual House Church, you can go to virtualhousechurch.com is our primary website. This website was originally created back in 2012 and 13. It's in the process right now of getting a major upgrade, and so all the links up to this week's study, which is 32, some say it's a 32-33 week. Some say we should be in numbers right now, but Midbar, I don't know. We're just going to keep going the way we are right now. So in some cases we'll be ahead of others, in other cases we'll be behind, and maybe somewhere we're in the middle and we're on track with them. But so anyway, all the links up to this week, which I have as week 32, takes you to the new website. So if you click on that, for instance, it takes you right here to our study page. But let's back up and go through the website to sort of get people oriented that are coming here for the first time. This is our home page right here. If you click on the About Us, it takes you to a page that tells you about Sheila and I, what we're about, our Virtual House Church store. We have the new calendar by Kevin and Amanda Roberts. You click on that, it takes you to the free PDF that you can view and or download and print up for yourself if you want to. That's their calendar right there. If you scroll down, and you can also click right here, it takes you to their website where you can order it directly from them. If you're interested in having a professional printed copy, you can do it that way. This is a calendar by Juan Carlos. Let me enlarge this a little bit here. Same thing, click on that and it takes you to a free PDF of his calendar, slightly different. So again, none of us claim to have the corner on truth on this stuff. We're all just doing the best we can. That's why there are different calendars out there. People have different ideas on how we should reckon the times and the seasons. So we're just trying to make resources available to you. You need to pray about it, decide for yourself what you think is the best one. There are Torah study workbooks. You can see below that. You can get those through Amazon. Typically faster, although they've been pretty slow in the last year or so. Or you can save some money and get them all together as a package deal. We are up to date on all of our orders, and I do have inventory in stock right now. So if you have ordered and you haven't received it yet, you're waiting on the U.S. Postal Service, it's on the way. And if you want to order, we do have them in stock now. The PDF, you can get that instantaneously if you get the PDF versions there. And those are good if you want to print up more copies for yourself, for your friends, for your family. Feel free to do so. You can do that with that resource right there. Ephraim Awakening DVD-ROM comes with all the resources you see listed there, including the PDF version of the Torah study workbooks. So that's available to you. The Statement of Faith right there just tells you what we believe here at the Virtual House Church. Defending Messiah page is a very comprehensive web page with lots of information for you to check out and set up by different categories. So you can just click on like who was the angel Lord, click on that, and it'll do a quick link jump down for you to this video by Adam from Parable of the Vineyard. And anyway, there's lots of stuff here for you to check out if you are wanting some good resources on defending Yeshua as the Messiah, and predominantly from Old Testament sources, because many people who want to diss Messiah, they will reject the New Testament as a source. So I'm like, you know what? Yeshua himself on the road to Emmaus, he used Moses and the prophets to tell them who he was, and Paul did the same thing. In the end of the book of Acts, you see that Paul is in a rented house, and he's beginning with Moses and the prophets to tell the people who Yeshua was. And the Bereans, be a good Berean, right? They were searching the scriptures daily. Well, the scriptures they were searching were not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and the writings of Paul. They were trying to validate the testimony of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the writings of Paul, and they were doing so with the Torah and the prophets. So I am of the opinion that we need to be able to do the same. We need to be able to defend Messiah from the Torah and the prophets, and so that's a big part of what we're doing here at the Virtual House Church, and certainly what's on this page right here. Coming out of Babylon, what does that mean? What does it mean to come out of Babylon and to keep the Sabbath and the feast and stuff like that? Again, another very comprehensive web page with lots of videos and books and resources for you to check out here. I recommend you spend some time on this page. Let's see here. Torah Fellowship. This page takes a few seconds to load. We certainly welcome everybody here on the Virtual House Church, but even with all the lockdowns and stuff like that, it's good that we try to find ways to fellowship with people actually in person. And this website created by 119 Ministry, this plugin, I should say, will enable you to do that. Let's check this person way down here in the end of South America. The way it works, you just click on one of these little blue tabs right there, and Daniel, he's probably looking for some fellowship down here in Tierra del Fuego, Argentina. Looks like he's all alone down there. So if you happen to live somewhere near him, this is his contact information. That's how that works. And it's the same with all the little tags. If you live in the United States, obviously there are lots of fellowships and people just looking for fellowship here. So chances are there's somebody near you that would like to fellowship with you. So that's a resource that's available for you there. What about Paul? Well, we here at the Virtual House Church, we love Paul. We believe Paul is an authentic apostle and that his writings are, in fact, scripture on par with the rest, even as Peter himself declared, 2 Peter. So, but many people who come here try to say that what we're doing here is wrong, and they will typically want to quote something that Paul wrote to justify that opinion. But I am of the opinion that you shouldn't post one thing or read one thing that Paul wrote until you thoroughly understand what Paul understood, read, studied, and likely had memorized. After you do that, then go back and read Paul, and he will take on a whole new light for you. And there are many frequently asked questions and comments dealing with Paul that are addressed in all these links right here. And also got a whole section dedicated just to the book of Galatians, because people many times like to come here and call me a foolish Galatian. And I say, well, are you really a foolish Galatian for trying to obey Yahuwah? No. And Peter believes the same, as he wrote to the Galatians right here. And lots of resources for you to check out in that regard. Hebrew calendars is a whole page dedicated just to that. And you'll notice the right side menu populates with some new stuff here that were not on the previous pages. Again, you have the calendars right there, other resources right there, and links dealing with the Sabbath and some of the feasts, spring feasts in particular. I need to update it as we get closer to the fall feasts. There are some good audio things here that will be a blessing to you. Yahuwah's Love Letter and Psalm 91. If you haven't heard those, I recommend you check those out. They will be a blessing to you. Online study tools that I use all the time are listed right here, as well as the Aramaic English New Testament. You can click on that to get that if you're interested. We are a listener-supported ministry, so for those of you who have supported us in the past, thank you so much. We cannot do what we do without people like you. So if you've been blessed by this ministry and would like to continue to see it continue, let me put it that way, this is one way you can do so by clicking on this right here. There was somebody who sent a contribution to us and requested it would be split up and sent to Jake and Juan Carlos, and so if that's you, if you were the one that did that, if you're hearing this right now, it was done. Thank you so much. That was forwarded on to the other guys as per request. And down below that are some other Torah ministries that we enjoy listed here, so you can check those out as well if you want to go into deeper insights and research and things that they have to offer. That's all available to you there. And let's go ahead and get into this week's study. This is the quick reference page for each week's study. The scripture readings are embedded here, so you can
The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai.
Click on that and have the scriptures read to you. The Parsha in 60 seconds. Parsha is the Hebrew word for study. Ministry out there that distills the Torah portions down to 60 seconds. That's right here. So that's available to you. And this is the video we're doing right now. So once we finish this video, it will archive here and remain on this page until I update it next week for next week's study. Then this big button here again takes you to our study page for this week, which is week 32, Behar Sinai, on Mount Sinai. If you're viewing this on a mobile device, you can click on this right here, and it takes you to the more mobile-friendly version of the web page, where you can resize it so it looks like that, or let me close this out here, my email going on there, or do it like that on a cell phone so you can swipe it with your thumb, and it's a lot more user-friendly, so that's available to you there. While I'm thinking about it, let me go ahead and pull up the Discord. I saw last week there people were like, post the Discord, and I didn't do it, so I apologize for that, but I will do it for you here now. And so mods, if you will take note of this link right here, and you can repost it as we go along through the broadcast. You can just keep reposting it, as we go along here, so people that miss it in the beginning here can get in later. So on the Discord server here, there are different rooms for you to have conversation, like general discussion right here. Looks like a very lively room with lots going on here. You can get into the Hebrew learning page, Hebrew cosmology page. If you have prayer requests and praise reports, you can do that there. If you want to discuss Paul, you can do that here. Dietary discussions there. Torah singles, if you're looking for other like-minded people and you're single, you could do that here. As with any online service, though I'd recommend proceeding with caution. I, of course, don't know everybody in there, so I can't personally vouch for anybody. We hope everybody's there with honorable intents, but you never know. It is open. Anybody could be watching this right now. Click on that link and get in there. So just be prayerful, be careful, as with anything like that online, but want to make that as a resource available to you nonetheless. The voice channel section is pretty cool. You can get in here and you can activate your camera and your microphone and actually have dialogue with people, and if you have your webcam you can see people, so it functions very much like a Skype or a Zoom call or something like that. So that's really cool right there. So all that is available to you on the Virtual House Church Discord server. Getting back to our study page, again we have the scriptures here. This will take you to BibleGateway.com. If you click on those, it takes you right to the scripture readings if you want to just go ahead and read them right there in the King James Version. And there's the audio player again. Let's go ahead and play this now, the Parsha in 60 seconds, and we'll jump in.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Leviticus 25:1 through 26:2. It is called Behar, which means on the mount. God gave the law of the sabbatical year for the land in which every 7th year the people would not tend their fields, but would eat anything that grew on its own. The 6th-year crop was enough for 3 years. Every 50 years was the Jubilee year. When the horn blast, all land holdings and debts were reset. If a person got bad land, their relatives would bail them out. If you sold your home in a walled city, you have an entire year in which you could buy it back. After a year, the sale is final. Country homes were subject to redemption and release through the Jubilee. Levites were to reside permanently in the cities of the Levites. Their land could not be sold. Though owning slaves from other countries was allowed, indebted kinsmen were to be treated as paid workers and not to be charged interest for their debts. On Jubilee year, they would be released. If indebted to a resident alien, a relative could bail them out, or the debtor could pay the prorata, or wait until Jubilee. And that is Behar in 60 seconds.
All right, that is this week's Torah portion distilled down to 60 seconds. And below that you have studies from 2013 and 14. Oops, I need to add the 2017 broadcast in here. I'll do that before the end of the day today. Then again, this is the video we're doing right now. This is done by the Way Biblical Fellowship, JP and Charlie's ministry right there. So if you want to listen to another ministry's take on this week's Torah portion, you can click on that. Always recommend the Ardell Your Living Waters Torah commentaries. These are fantastic. Highly recommend them. Click on them, view them, download them, print them off, put them in a notebook. You'll be glad you did. Lots of good insights there. Cannot stress that enough. Please take advantage of those resources. And below that are notes from previous year's broadcasts and scripture readings. And apparently I was talking about 322 tetrads and time of Jacob's trouble. Some videos there. Rapture came up. All kinds of stuff came up in previous year's discussions right there. So all that is available to you on the study page. All right, enough of the admin stuff here. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let me get Jake online here. And looks like Jake's got a buddy with him there. Hey, how you doing, guys? Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
How's it going? Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you good. Yeah, man.
Awesome. We found a quieter place. And just to introduce my friend here, this is Jeff Monroe. He was kind enough to let us use his vehicle for a quiet space. as well as loaning me his Bible and giving my wife and I a place to stay while we're down here in Tennessee.
Wow.
So,
Hey, that's awesome, brother. What's your name again? I'm sorry I missed it.
Jeff Monroe.
Jeff.
We've met before, Rob.
Yeah, you look really familiar. We must have met at a conference or something somewhere.
Yeah, we met at a couple. I was usually there with my dad, John.
Oh, dude. I'm totally spaced right there. Yeah, John. Yeah, I remember you guys prayed for our son Jeremiah, and we've had a lot of good time in fellowship in the past. Yeah.
That's right.
Good to see you again. Sorry, man. I do so many conferences. I see so many people.
That's
but
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. Well, say hi to your dad for me, man.
I will.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're down here in Tennessee right now. We are visiting the Paul Wilbur conference, pre-Shavuot conference at Jacob's Tent. And so Sierra and I drove down here, and we've been having some good fellowship. And it's interesting, their event's name is Up to the Mountain, and our Torah portion today we're studying is On the Mountain. And
Yeah.
it'll be a good talk today.
Yeah, right on. Well, I've done enough talking already, so why don't you go ahead and share with us your insights, and brother, if you want to share also, feel free. If you guys, you guys can tag team it. As I said earlier, Juan Carlos is going to be late, so he may not be here till maybe the second hour or so. So the floor is yours. Go for it.
All right. Well, just getting into this, just a quick, brief overview for anybody. We're going to be reading about the Jubilee cycle and the release of debts and also a really interesting process that kind of hits home for me with some things we've experienced recently, where other children of Israel are told to redeem their brothers whenever they had to sell themselves into slavery or whatever, and whether it was their home, whether it was their property, whether it was them themselves, the children of Israel were told to come in and strengthen your brother. And man, Rob, since the last time I was on here, Sierra and I have been through a whirlwind of experiences and just some crazy stuff. We just got down from Missouri, where we had gone through that whole flash flood thing that happened at the Parable of the Vineyards event, and really, reading through this Torah portion and experiencing that first, and then kind of seeing the things here the scripture talks about when we are supposed to step in and take care of our brother whenever they don't have a home, is something I experienced personally with Sierra and I. So just a quick brief summary of kind of what we've been through and kind of what we learned from that and how it ties to this Torah portion is, we went down to this event, and on the way our bus broke down that we were staying in, and we got it towed to get fixed, and because we had it towed to the mechanic, it wasn't swept away when this big flash flood came in and totally turned what was once a campground into a roaring river. It was insane.
Wow.
But praise God, not a single person was hurt or an animal lost.
Wow.
It was just this experience where things were lost. So the whole campground, a lot of people were there actually the previous year. I went to Steve Mutria's Sukkot at the same location, and during Sukkot, this creek bed was this dry, rocky, no water in sight thing. And even when we were there during this event 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, it was just this tiny little stream, and we actually had to go hunting for a place to do baptisms in it because we couldn't find a place deep enough. And then that morning after the Passover event, we heard thunder and lightning, but it wasn't really raining even that hard. But apparently it rained so hard upriver that it just came flushing down, and by 8:30 in the morning, the tent started in the far corner of the camp. For those who might have gone to Steve's Sukkot or had been out there, the back tent started to kind of get flooded, and we were out there trying to help pull tents away. And within 5 minutes, the water was up to my chest.
Wow.
And it was the entire campground was flooded. People were grabbing kids. People were having to be cut out of tents. it was this incredible, ferocious, fast thing that happened in the blink of an eye. And I'll tell you what, we learned some very, very serious lessons, but lessons that if this hadn't happened, I don't think we would have ever had it click really in the way that it needed to. But the lessons that were, what truly matters and values to you in your life. What do you spend your time, worrying about? If you had 5 minutes to grab and something, and the thing you grab in that 5 minutes is what you'd be able to hold on to. Would you spend your time like sorting through your things and trying to pack up and trying to save things? And because you tried to take the time to save things, it was all lost. A lot of us kind of realized the importance and the value of human life, and how in the future, as believers, we know there are tough times coming. But this event, I'll tell you what, Rob, it has planted a seed of a message that is going to go out to all these different people, congregations that people came from all over the United States, of the message of we need to be ready, and we need to be ready not just in a physical sense, at a moment's notice. There's the scripture that talks about when you see the abomination of desolation, don't go in and get your coat, flee right away. If you're up on the mountain, the top of your building or whatever, and you don't go down to get your things, you got to go. There's not time to save the things that are, earthly wealth and possessions. And this is just the timing of this was amazing, because it happened at Passover. It was second Passover that we were keeping. It was first Passover for Adam and the group. But it was just really amazing, because tied to the Passover season, you also have the understanding of you need to have your staff in hand and your cloak on, and you got to be ready to go. And it was really cool, because a lot of the men who stayed up the entire evening, as a lot of us were planning to. I personally didn't. Several other people, we were like too tired, we went to bed. But we were kind of following that example of Yeshua, where he asked the apostles, stay up and watch with me, right? Well, it turned out that those men who stayed up the whole evening and kept a vigil all night were the men who were there ready when the flooding started to happen. And they were up and aware and watchmen who were saving people.
Wow.
And it was like all of these little lessons that I know I'm kind of rambling through this, because I get good, excited, reliving the event. Man, in just a blink of an eye, people had lost pretty much anything they brought. If they were camping, if they had tents on the ground, it was gone in minutes. There wasn't time to save your stuff. All you could do is grab your children and get to high ground. It was really, my wife and my sister-in-law were with us, and when the flood came, my wife gave Aliyah, my baby, to my sister-in-law and our friend, and said, get to high ground. And so they took off in their car, and they came up to this river that had risen up over the road, and they thought that the whole valley was about to be flooded. And so they took Aliyah, and Aliyah means to go up the mountain. And on Aliyah's 5-month, she was turned 5 months old the day that the flood happened. They literally climbed a mountain thinking that they were trying to escape the water. And it was just like this really, crazy event for all of us. And so I went looking for them. I couldn't find my baby. I was like, where'd they go? We saw their car. We were trying to help people. There's people whose RVs were just lifted up where they were parked and floated down the river.
Wow.
And there were cars that were literally like floated on top of other cars and all this crazy stuff. And I remember looking for my daughter, and after like an hour or so, we couldn't find them, and we were really worried. And just kind of whenever you go through those moments, you're like, what is God doing, right? What is Yah doing? And I remember as soon as it was the craziest moment, right? Where we saw cars floating down this new river that's now in the middle of our campground. All the people there, and I'll remember this whole thing is going to be just burned into my mind for the rest of my life. But all the people there, they started calling out and calling on the name of the Most High, praying and asking for deliverance, and it was just like one of those moments, man, that it'll just be there. It's going to be there for the rest of my life. And I was looking for my baby girl, and I look up and I see my sister-in-law coming down the side of the mountain. A guy had like waved at him, hey, you can come down here. It's not totally flooded out. And they come down off the mountain, and my baby girl is in the carriage, covered in sticks and mud, and the dirtiest I'd ever seen her, right? But man, she had the biggest grin on her face. Like, she was like having a blast and smiling, and anyway, so it was through that event, through that terrible traumatic experience, that the following days we saw some of the most beautiful community coming together moments that I think I've ever seen at a feast or a conference or anything like that. Because in a single day, Yah got us all real quick.
Wow,
he stripped away any fakeness anybody had, and everybody was kind of put to the T, and you kind of showed your real colors. And man, it was real beautiful, kind of what happened. And it's because of that event that a lot of people are like, they're dedicating their lives to full-time ministry.
Wow.
People are saying they're going to go home and sell everything they have and hit the road. It's just been this, out of this event, you have some really beautiful things kind of sprouting out of this, experience. And so, anyways, I said all that to say, while we were there, even though our RV was locked up in the mechanic, it was kind of by the grace of Yah that he broke our RV down to save our RV from being in the flood when the flood happened.
Yeah.
Which was miraculous in itself. But we got to see what it meant and what it would look like to truly depend on the Most High on a day-to-day basis. It was funny, during the Exodus, they left Israel after the Passover meal, and then he moved them, and they followed the cloud wherever it went, and he provided them with manna, and the community had to come together and had to share things, and we literally all got to experience that. Anybody who was there got to experience the provision of the Most High and him taking care of us. We had anything of our own trust and our ability to kind of provide and protect ourselves, and he took a lot of that down a river, and showed us what it meant to actually depend on him on a day-to-day basis. And I just want to say this, is that he absolutely did. He provided a way for people to have places to stay. There was food in abundance. I think I gained like 10 pounds during the aftermath of the flood, because there was so much food that everybody had to eat and get rid of that we were just feasting every single night. And oh man, it was just a beautiful experience. But let me kind of bring it back around to kind of our tour portion today.
Well, hang on, Jake. Wow. Like I hadn't, I just heard bits and pieces from people referring to it, but I had not heard any of this. Wow. And that happened on Passover, no less. So, like I said before, in the last year's Passover was the first Passover where I actually put a go bag next to my bed. Like I always did everything else for Passover, but I didn't do that part, like be ready to go, at a moment's notice thing. So last year was the first time I had a go bag ready to go. This year I was traveling. I was in Florida, so I I'm going to do second Passover, which would be I guess later this month. But boy, that's a word for everybody, man. And the incredible testimonies you just shared right there is in fact in and of itself a testimony to obedience and his faithfulness in the obedience, providing for you and sparing you also. I mean, it's so many times when something bad happens, right? Like your car breaks down, your RV breaks down, you're like, oh man, come on. Not even realizing, but wow, this is actually a really good thing, sparing you from significant heartache and problem and down the road. So it's a word to everybody, and this is hard. I admit it. When difficult things happen, it's hard to rejoice. That's the last thing. I'll just be honest with the audience. That's the last thing on my mind when something bad or inconvenient like that happens. I'm not. My default is not to rejoice, put it that way. But this is a good example of why we don't know why things happen a lot of times. And many times it's there for our own good, our own benefit, our own safety, our own protection. And your story is a perfect example of that. And, saving your baby girl and all of it, just, wow, man, like, I'm praising God over here. What an amazing testimony. But as I'm listening to you and hearing the devastation that happened, obviously a lot of good came out of it from what you're telling me in the testimonies there, but also a lot of people lost stuff. So is there a GoFundMe or a PayPal or anything that, we got a listening audience here. We are a family here at the Virtual House Church. Can we help you? I mean, you or anybody else. I mean, has anybody created a page or a fund somewhere to distribute to, anybody that may be in need right now? If so, please share.
Yes. I know Carly, who helped out with the event, she put together a GoFundMe page, and I can shoot you over a link to that after the show here, and you can put it in the description if you want.
Yeah.
Even with that, we're seeing the community come together in an amazing way to help, provide for the needs of people who lost things. Yeah, man, it's just it's been like this amazing lesson. I hear people that didn't go, that showed up like 2 or 3 days after, like maybe Thursday or Friday after the flood had happened, and they're like, we're looking at all you people who went through this terrible event, and we can't help but to say that we wish we were there when it happened. And
Wow.
That's so crazy to hear from somebody that, but it's what they see in these people that are coming through
Wow.
this traumatic event, and the joy and the oh man, it's been an amazing experience. And I kept telling myself while we were living through it, I'm like, man, I'm living in a memory I know I'm going to have for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell myself a message for the future, because I know this memory of this experience is going to be burned into my mind for the rest of my life. And it kind of reminds me of why Yah tells the children of Israel, remind your children yearly that I'm the God who brought you out of Egypt and brought you into the promised land and delivered you with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. And now, like, when you live through an experience that helps you understand what the deliverance of the Most High looks like in a literal sense, you understand that, like, for here on out, I'm going to, like, take that really seriously. I'm going to be like, our God is the God.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's Passover.
People.
Passover has always been a remembrance feast, right? I mean, it's the institution of Passover was meant to be a remembrance of what Yahuwah did with Israel, taking them out of Egypt. And then when Yeshua partook of his Passover, he said, do this. What was the this he was doing? He was doing Passover. He said, from this point forward, but essentially do this in remembrance of me, So it's always a remembrance feast. And so now you have your own personal remembrance to add to, the remembrance of the Exodus and the remembrance of Yeshua. So, wow, that's exciting, man.
Yeah, it was amazing how it all lined up with the Passover time frame as well. Like, it was the morning after the Passover meal that the children of Israel left on their Exodus, and then they had to depend on the Most High day after day to move them from place to place as He led them to where they were going. And all of us that kind of went through the flood, it was that morning at 8 a.m. that the flood came.
Wow.
And we were literally moved day after day after that from place to place, given free places to stay, hotels in the local area. They opened up their rooms for people. It was really amazing. And every day we didn't know what was next, but we knew that we were going to be all right. And, man, it was quite the experience.
It sounds like it. Wow. That's amazing, man. I mean, truly. Jeff, were you there also? Did you go? Did you?
No, I was not. No. My wife and I, we live here in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Okay.
But we just moved here a few months ago.
Oh, nice.
But we Jake had told me about it, and I had actually mentioned something to the congregation here. We have after every Shabbat service, we do like a lunch, like an oneg, and then we do like a midrash, and people can, they hand a microphone around, and anybody who wants to share prayer requests or praise reports or something that they had, a comment from the scriptures or anything, pretty open forum. I took the opportunity to make mention of that for people to be praying for those who are affected by the flood, but to also give the praise report. I didn't get too much into the details, but to basically say how Yah had used that to bring a group of people together, and suffering builds character. And
as a former Marine, you know that well, probably. Right?
Yeah, yes, you have a good memory. Yes, yeah. I do know that quite well myself.
Yeah. A Paris Island inmate.
Yeah, Paris Island in the middle of June is suffering.
Wow, man.
Yeah. So it's definitely is I kind of wish I was there, but I'm also glad that people were delivered and that there was no casualties, because especially something like you said, 5 minutes, water's up to his chest, like
that's crazy.
Man, that's intense. And so the fact that no one was hurt.
You said it happened 8 o'clock in the morning, Jake?
Yeah, it was about 8 o'clock that the furthest tents in the very far corner of the camp just started getting a little flushed out. The river was just starting to come up over the banks, and by the time it was over the banks, that whole area is like a floodplain. And we thought we had time to move the tents, and we were trying to pull up tent poles and untie tent stuff.
Nope.
And then in moments, people were shouting, "Get out! Get your vehicles! Go!
Wow. I'd have been in trouble because 8 o'clock in the morning, like I'd have probably been pretty deep into REM at that point. Like what is this, a dream? Oh man.
Yeah, there was a moment that was just it was crazy. We were coming out of the deeper part of the camp where it was flooding, and there was this RV, and there were like people pinned between an RV in the middle of a roaring river. And there was like a group of people that had to like make a chain of people to help people get out of the further parts of that were flooding really quickly. Wow. It was just quick and fast. If it had happened at any other time, we would have lost lives. If it had been 2, 3 in the morning when we were all sleeping,
that's when I would have made it. I would have made it if it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Wow.
So,
dude.
That's kind of why I feel, and many other people that were there, we feel that this was Yah's testing to see what was really in our hearts, right? We all come and we go to these events, saying we're Torah observant believers in the Most High, and, you can put on a pretty face or whatever, but, it takes going through things to actually see what's in our hearts. Are we going to curse him when we go through bad stuff, when we lose a vehicle or when we lose our stuff? Or are we going to continue to thank him and praise him and be mindful of him? And I think that's, it reminds me of kind of the experience Job went through, where he lost and had a lot of the things that he had built up over his life taken from him. I believe a flood was even one of those things that took the things from him and Satan sent a flood to test Job. And in the same way, this was definitely a testing, and just praise God that that we all went through it, and whether it was a blessing or a lesson from because whenever we go through these hard things and we experience a low point in our life, we can look at it in two ways. Either the Most High is preparing us for something beautiful and wonderful on the back end of it, or we fail our lesson, we fail the test, and that test becomes that we can then use later on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I kind of realized from this is anybody who started kind of being frustrated or grumbly, they'll look back at this time and be like, oh man, next time I go through something hard, I'm not going to be so quick to curse the Most High. Instead, I'm going to look at any situation He puts me through, and I'm going to be thankful even in the midst of trials and tribulations, because it's the testing of our faith to see what's really in us and to see who we really say we believe. When you have nothing left and everything's kind of like you got to trust day by day, then it's a totally different game. And I think that's why I kind of wanted to bring this up and tell that story, because that's the message that a lot of us who went through this experience are going, and we're speaking to our home fellowships and to people that we come in contact with now is, we all need to be ready, and not just physically ready to go in 5 minutes. You get your bug out bag ready if you had to, but spiritually, like, what if we hadn't made it? What if we, what if that flood had taken some of us away? There was not a single person that could have told you that dry little shallow creek bed was going to turn into a roaring river, save that is the name of the state park. So we should have maybe taken some notes when we all went camping in Roaring River State Park. But
oh wow, lived up to its name.
Yeah, we should have noticed, but it did not look like a roaring river when we were doing baptisms the day before.
Wow.
But we all got to be ready, and I think that's kind of what I got out of it is we need to be prepared, because we're not promised tomorrow, and if we are a lot of the people that spent a lot of time going to try to save their stuff, they actually ended up losing everything, because it was the people that wanted to pack up and save all of the things that they could. They are the ones that ran out of time. But it's the people that knew exactly what they had to grab, and they could do it in a split second thought.
Yeah. And
they left everything else. Those are the people that actually were able to save things. So that's a big lesson for us too, I think.
Yeah, really good stuff, man. That's awesome. All right. Wow. Didn't know we were going to go this direction here today, but I think this was a really good, encouraging word for everybody out there, and a powerful testimony, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's, man, people are already asking in the chat room about a link, so I don't have anything to post in the chat room right now, so when Jake gets it to me, I will put it in the description box below this video once we are done with it. So, Jake, don't forget, afterwards to send me any page, a GoFundMe page or whatever you guys might have in that regard. So, so Jeff, is this? Are you guys just doing a regular Shabbat weekend right now, or are you guys having an event or something, or what's the connection right now that you guys are all together today?
So this weekend, Jacob's Tent is hosting. It's basically a conference, but they're calling it, and it's called the title of it is Up to the Mountain, in preparation for Shavuot next weekend.
Oh.
And Paul Wilbur is here this weekend, which brings in a lot of people.
Yeah.
We're actually, I don't know if you know Bill Cloud.
Yeah.
He's the guy who kind of heads Jacob's Tent, and he used to be on staff with Perry Stone, and Perry Stone has a church here in Cleveland. So we use his facility for events of this magnitude, because there's no way we could fit this many people in the place we usually fellowship in. So yeah, that's why Jake's Jake came up probably what? It was the last couple days. Yeah, you came down and we broke unleavened bread together.
Yeah.
And so that was about a month ago. And we just hung out for like a day, and like it was not even 24 hours. He was like, "Well, we got to come back." You know, his wife and my wife and I were like, "Yeah, absolutely, we'd love to have you guys back, and we can go to." You know, my wife and I we go to Jacob's tent every week, and it's actually pretty much one of the main reasons why we moved here to Tennessee from DC area where I was living before.
Yeah, when we came down, we were talking with Jeff, and I wasn't personally super familiar with Jacob's tent, but I was a very big fan of a gentleman named Brad Scott. I got to interview Brad Scott several times over the years before he passed away, and he was really close to my heart. I really liked Brad, and then I found out that they were going to this congregation thing that Brad Scott's best friend is Bill Cloud, and so that's kind of we were like, whoa, wow, we got to come down and visit. I didn't know that he had a best friend and that he was plugged into this area. And so last night was their kind of kickoff, and today they're going to have a Paul Wilbur concert. And Sierra grew up listening to Paul Wilbur since she was like 5 years old, so it's a big moment for her too. She's like, we got to get a picture with Paul Wilbur. So that's our goal today. We're gonna try go fanboy Paul Wilbur. But yeah, it's been amazing. There's so many people here. There's like, what did you say, Jeff?
I think there's close to. I think they're expecting 700 people.
700
that registered to be here.
Wow.
Shofar carrying, Torah observant,
Tzitzit wearing,
Shabbat Shalomin, people, man, it's amazing.
That's cool. Arthur Herring is in the chat room, and he told us how to find the GoFundMe page, so I just looked it up. It says, please help families caught in flash flood on GoFundMe. So this is the page. I got it up on the screen here, and the link is in the chat room. Looks like one of the moderators picked it up too. So, hey, everybody, this is a family. We need to help out our family. So just encourage you guys to do what you can to help our brothers and sisters out that experienced this thing here. But, wow, that sounds like quite an event that you guys are at. That's pretty exciting, man.
Yeah, we're very excited. And Paul Wilbur, he comes up from Jacksonville, Florida. He came up for Passover, and he was like, I got to keep coming back here. And so he came back up with his wife, and he says he's going to try and keep coming back up as regularly as he can. But yeah, we're definitely very blessed with this group of people. We usually have about almost 300 people, probably 250 to 300 people every Saturday, every Shabbat. So it's a very good group of people here that the Father is bringing together, and we're it's very family oriented, and just being together in Messiah, being one in Messiah. That was actually one of the things they've been talking about last night and this morning during the service was there was neither Jew nor Greek, nor slave nor free, male nor female, all being one in Messiah. And it's not so much about trying to be Jewish or whichever denomination you come from, if you're Pentecostal background or Baptist or Catholic or whatever. It's about being one in Messiah and being Israel, and keeping the word and the commandments of Elohim, and striving together in this wilderness. And that was one of the things. We're on the Torah portion this week of we just started Numbers of Bamidbar. Yeah.
Numbers, yeah.
And Bill talked about today how that word midbar can mean I think he said it was wilderness. It was wilderness.
Yeah.
But it can also mean, I think he said to speak, or was that another word? Or maybe Paul was talking about that. I might be conflating two different messages. But no, I think it was. I think the wilderness. He said
Yeah.
it means to speak, and like Elohim, God speaks to us
In the wilderness.
in the wilderness.
Wow, that's the
It's when he
truth.
takes. It's when he takes all the things away from us, our comforts that we give ourselves, that often pad our ears, right? That's when we often don't hear his voice. But whenever he puts his people in the wilderness and makes us depend 100% on him,
Mhm.
that's when we hear his voice.
You hear from him, and you draw closer to him. And yeah, there's a lot of people that are experiencing that, like the people that were at that Passover in Missouri, and even people that are moving here. There's a lot of people moving here to Cleveland, and they're experiencing that wilderness type, of reliance and dependence on the Most High. People who are quitting their jobs and moving and not having a place to live lined up, really, or a means of an income, but they're coming here to be a part of this group of fellowship, and people are helping one another, and people are staying with people are providing connections for jobs and things like that, and it's we're really being a family here. And one of the things, our goals, is to have that, not just a church building where people go and that's just where you hang out once a week, but to have a place that is a source of life, and people can go there and receive whatever it is they need, whether it's counseling, financial aid, references for, if you need somebody to work on your car. Oh yeah, Steve over there, he's a mechanic, he can help you out or whatever, and just kind of be that family, that community together, without being like a kibbutz or like an actual socialist commune or anything weird like that. Because I've actually I went to Israel in 2018 and been to a kibbutz, which is where I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's kind of like a social commune, and it's
I stayed
it's
at
a
one.
little too close.
Yeah, it was kind of like a hostel. If you ever stayed.
It's a little too close for comfort. They start sharing things like clothes and stuff. As I need my own space, but
right. Yeah.
But to get as close as you can while still having your boundaries and your own space, but to be that family together, and to praise and worship the Most High in spirit and in truth, and to be that support system that I know so many people need. Oh, everyone needs it, but people are lacking, especially in this movement. So many people, the Father kind of removes the scales from their eyes, and they're sitting in the pews in the church on Sunday, and they're like, I think I'm supposed to be keeping the Sabbath and eating clean and doing all these feasts and everything, and no one else wants to do it with me at this church, so I guess I'm like the only one. And lo and behold, just like you were showing earlier, there's the fellowship finder, and there really are so many people out there who are doing this walk, and it's not just about being a maverick, and you don't need anybody, but in reality you do. We really need each other, especially the things we're seeing, not to get too political, but it's hard to not witness what's going on in our government, and not just ours, but in other governments across the world, with this whole China virus stuff, and the vaccines and the mask mandates, and this, that, and the other thing. It's kind of like, are we gonna be Israel and band together, or are we gonna, well, I can't hang out with him because he doesn't pronounce the name the same way I do, or he doesn't believe that the day starts at sunrise or sunset, or he's on a whatever, and it's like you just need to get over ourselves and learn how to be Yah's people, because he's coming back for one bride, not 40,000 different denominations. It's we need to be united, and while not compromising. Like I know there are people who on their journey for searching and studying what is the truth, that they end up falling into these potholes, these ditches, and getting into wacky doctrines and theologies, and throwing out entire books of the Bible, or even the entire New Testament, and therefore Messiah himself. And obviously we can't stand for things like that, and we need to stand our ground and know the word enough to be able to defend the truth. But when it comes to things that are, I don't want to say petty, because they do matter, but when we become petty about them, that are not as deeply fundamental such as faith in Messiah and Yeshua. And
I've heard it put one way, sometimes people major on the minors and they minor on the majors.
Yeah, exactly.
And as long as we can focus on the things that really matter to our faith, number one being our Messiah,
mm-hmm.
and also what our Messiah told us to do, which is keep his word.
Right.
And if we can focus on those things, then all the other things we can have debates and discussions and come together on. But I think that's how you kind of challenge the ecumenical movement of the modern kind of apostate church,
right? Which
is everybody can kind of get to God in their own way, but rather we know that the way is narrow, and it's through one door that we can be reconciled with the Most High, and He shows us one way, which is His Word, keeping the Word. And so that's kind of flies in the face of the modern version of ecumenicalism, which is there are many ways to God. There are many different paths.
All roads lead to heaven.
All roads lead to heaven. But rather, if we can be in one mind of all the people who call on the name of Yod He Vav He, and Yeshua, and focus on that, and that's what brings us together.
Amen.
Yeah, good stuff. I just hope it includes people who have different views on cosmology, because I'm seeing a whole lot of division in that regard.
Yeah.
And some of the people,
I
don't want to mention names, but they came after me because I'm a heretic teaching biblical cosmology. I'm like, yeah, okay, what about all that unity stuff everybody's preaching? What happened to that?
Yeah, it's definitely, that's a big one, and I try not to touch on that subject too much, because there are people who are very sensitive and they will forget about all that unity stuff that we talked about.
It goes out real quick.
But I do know people. Oh yeah, and I know it, Rob. I'm on the same page, and I've not to the same degree you have, but I've experienced a lot of similar scenarios of people coming after me, and people who are putting their arm around my neck one minute, and then the next minute they're squeezing it around my neck because
right. Because you don't believe the same way about the earth. It's like, really?
Because exactly on that one thing, and it's so absurd, and I don't understand it. But
well, I think that's what the benefit of us all as a body of believers, no matter our viewpoints, going through these tough times, these trials and these events, is really quickly. It doesn't matter what you believe on one topic or the other. If your brother needs clothes or a place to stay or food, Yah's the great equalizer, and I think that's kind of, whenever we're all comfortable, that's when we're so easily divided. But whenever we're all like depending on the Most High for our basic needs and hoping that our brother will come in and help us out, that's kind of what breaks those bridges that I feel like so easy people are they're willing to divide over topics now, cosmology or names or calendars or whatever it might be, but it's whenever the going gets tough, that's when we're going to come together in the way that we're all hoping to see, and that's definitely what we learned a few weeks back is there are different opinions and there are different groups there, people kind of viewing things in different ways, but when the time came to it, everybody stepped up, and that's what was so beautiful to see. And I think that's what we're all going to experience especially looking at the current political climate and the things coming on the world. You know, if you're living in Israel right now and you're having rockets shot down on you and talk of war and all that kind of stuff, you know, you got to find out who your friends are real quick. And, you know, I think that's kind of where we're all going to come to very quickly is we're going to have to decide, are we going to break bread with people, even if we disagree with them on some of these topics, and going to learn fast who's really walking in the spirit of the Messiah, you know, loving the downcast and the, you know, the people that he had all the right to look down on because he knew they were in error in certain ways. You know, will people also have that heart when the time comes to walk out their faith, show that they truly are going to walk like the Messiah and not just talk like him, and then we'll kind of see where all the chips fall.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I definitely feel, you know, I know I can't speak for everybody here at Jacob's Tent, and I'm trying to promote it, but my wife and I have been very blessed by this group, by this congregation, and my wife and I were having a conversation with somebody, I'm not going to name any names, but somebody who is established here and has been here for a while, and everybody knows who they are. And we were having a conversation, and they were talking about how lovely it is here, and how there are people of different backgrounds, but, you know, everyone here is accepted, and we all are striving for that unity and to overlook our differences, if, you know, whatever they are, but to be civil about them, not just to sweep them under the rug, but to actually, you know, learn from each other and glean from each other. And this person said, yeah, we even have flat earthers here. And I wasn't going to like out myself right then in that moment, but they were like, yeah, and they're really great people, you know, even though they believe that or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, I know a lot of great people that I disagree with, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day that we disagree on one or two topics if we can, you know, provide a need and not just, and really ultimately, you know, if somebody's, you know, gone through a flood and they lost their belongings and they need things like that obviously, but also just in the day-to-day, in the more mundane things. Like my wife and I, we're so blessed to just be able to go out for dinner in the middle of the week or go and play board games at someone's house, you know, with people that are like-minded in the faith, and we can enjoy one another's company and spend time together and outside of, you know, the weekly Shabbat service, and to be in someone's life and to have them in yours. It really is healing, and it's like it nourishes your soul, and so things like that, you know, I feel like it's a need. We were created to be social creatures, to hang out with each other, and yeah, we talk scripture, but we also talk about kind of like, you know, kind of whatever music you like, and we get to know one another, and I feel like it's building those relationships where you can come into somebody's tent, somebody's house, eat a meal with them, and share that time getting to know one another, where then they will, those walls that they put up start to come down, and you're able to minister to any wounds that they might have. And I can speak this for myself, having experienced it as somebody who needed to have my walls come down, but to also then be someone who on the other side went in and helped bring someone's walls down. Well, the Father did. But I was there to kind of help minister to them and be able to speak to some things. And it wasn't like, hey, I'm here to preach flat earth to you and now you need to believe it. It was more. It was clear that they had some run-ins with some people, and I'm not going to name names, but I know that you know some people, Rob, who preach flat earth at people, and then they're like totally anti-Torah and all that stuff, and they're very bitter and not fun to be around. And that you can tell that they've had run-ins with those types of people, but they haven't met people like us that are just like, hey, yeah, I believe that, but I'm also like pretty nice person to get around, to hang out with, and I just want to fellowship with you and pray and sing praises to our Father in heaven and read scripture together, and like I'm not your enemy just because I disagree with you on this one topic. And so I don't know, I'm not trying to infiltrate or be somebody to that's not why we came here, but I do feel like I see an opportunity where the Father has brought my wife and I here and others to kind of be those faces where we can get to know one another, hang out, and then be like, hey, by the way, I believe this thing, or they'll find out somehow or whatever, because it's already happened in the few months that we've been here. It came up, and I was like, yeah, I believe that, and they were like, oh, and before they were like, they were probably like, oh yeah, those stupid flat earthers or whatever, but then they're like, here I am, you're gonna call me a stupid flat earther, or
Right.
Are you still gonna be my friend? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess it doesn't really change anything. I'm like, good, because it shouldn't. And if anything, like, and then it brought an opportunity to they were open to even hearing about it, because so many people don't even, they just shut it down. They go, yeah, that's stupid, not gonna listen to that. But because you've form that relationship, and they're actually able to stop and go, well, I like you. You seem like a pretty level-headed person. Maybe I will hear you out on it. And it's not about trying to evangelize and everybody needs to believe it. Obviously, that would be ideal. But to just get the ball, to get the gears turning and get them to thinking about it. And I've already had a couple conversations with people where they were like, hey, you know what? I probably wouldn't have been open to talking about that, but I think I would be open to talking about that with you. And it's like, hey, let's start. And definitely I see that. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And it's not something that's going to happen across the board. But I do see that opportunity where the Father is going to present certain people with that chance to kind of reevaluate, because it's really not about whether you believe as one cosmology over the other. It's really about your heart. Are you going to believe his word? Are you going to believe what he says about everything, and how he created the world, and how he wants to fellowship with us? And one of the biggest ways it's been a blessing to me is I now understand quite literally that my Father in heaven pitched a tent so he could hang out with me.
What a great way of putting it. That's right. He stretched out a tent for us to dwell in.
He pitched a tent, and he wants to hang out with me. He wants to hang out with you.
Yeah, the first word, Bereshit, right? With the bait in front, and bait is the word for house also. So, like, the first letter of the first word is setting out to describe the tent that he pitched for us. And Andy Hoy's model, man, I mean, and that was quite independent of biblical cosmological research, totally independent of it. He was not even remotely on that page when he started doing the research. But then after he created it and then saw some of my stuff, he's like, maybe I should talk to this guy, because what if, right? We know that Moses was shown something in the heavenlies that he was to emulate here on earth. What if he got a bird's eye view, so to speak, of this place and said, okay, let's create a miniature, and that makes it that much more intimate, as you're describing, that he created a house for us to dwell in, to have a fellowship, family relationship with us in this tent. That is completely, all of that is completely foreign to the standard cosmological Copernican, Galileo, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Gene Roddenberry universe, where like,
Right.
where's God? You know, like, oh, he's in another dimension. What does that mean? Where is he? You know, in the Isaiah description, he's right there. He's like right there, you know, right above us.
Right now. He's right there right now.
Right.
Like watching us and listening to this conversation. You know, like he's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of what you were saying is something that's been on Sierra and I's heart a lot recently is what does it mean to be the Church of Philadelphia, right? What does it mean to be the Church of Brotherly Love? Well, whenever you think about, like, if I'm not hearing from God, if I'm humble enough to be willing to go to my brothers and spend time with them and fellowship with them, despite our differences, and being willing to hear them out and say, hey, what's God speaking to you? Isn't that what brotherly love kind of looks like? Is going and being willing to hear your brother out and what he's passionate about and what God's speaking to him. And I think that's why, you know, if at any time, you know, you think, wow, I might not be hearing the voice of God right now. Maybe he's speaking to your bro, and if you go, then that's how you hear kind of what he wants for his people and what he's trying to, you know, share. And you know, I think that's kind of what we've been realizing lately, traveling around, going to all these different fellowships and mixing with different people who have very different views and different calendars and different cosmological views and all that is, you know, if God is speaking to us all, then on the chance that I'm hearing a part and you're hearing a part, the only way we get all the puzzle pieces together and actually hear what he wants to do for and with his people is by not freaking out when somebody's different in their viewpoint, but coming together and being willing to hear them out. And why are you so passionate about this topic? And why is he speaking to you this, you know, about this or that? And I think that's why the Church of Brotherly Love, you know, is promised to escape the hour of temptation, is because if God speaks to his people at any one point, you know, am I going to be willing to hear you out, or am I going to be so high on my horse with my preconceived notions and, you know, cognitive dissonance that I'm going to deafen my ears to what he's speaking to you because you have a different opinion on this, that, or that, you know? And, man, but yeah, it's just, you know, being willing to hear others out. And hopefully, you know, people right now who are watching that might have been a little harsh to their bro or sis that have different opinions, you know, they'll take this to heart and be willing to have those conversations and be willing to not cut the ear off, but restore and bring together. And I think that's a lesson for me, at least. Hopefully for all of us.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I definitely.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. I was just gonna say I definitely feel like there's a big need for that healing, especially because, you know, everybody's experienced some form of rejection, especially when you're starting to come to Torah and the biblical cosmological model and all that. But especially people who've done both. It's very easy, and I speak from my own experience, to get bitter and jaded and want to become a maverick, and you don't want to hang out with or talk with anybody because you're afraid of getting hurt, and you just want to put up all these walls and sit in your house, and the only fellowship or you know you have is something virtual like this. Not knocking this, I think this is great, but completely replacing physical community and fellowship with something only virtual. And I did that for a time, and it's not worth it. It's you need that fellowship, and to be able to, and you need to, in order to open yourself back up to that, you need to find that healing from the Father and offer forgiveness. You know, Yeshua was on the cross dying, and the very people who put him there, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. and to have that heart and just be willing to forgive people, because honestly, he tells us in the Lord's Prayer that we all know, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. And I know I have my fair share of sins that I've sinned against people, and I would hope that they forgive me, and I would hope our Father in heaven forgives me. And so who am I to not extend that back?
Mm-hmm.
And you have the Matthew, I think it's 18, with the parable of the man who was forgiven much,
mm-hmm.
but then he didn't forgive the other guy who owed him much less. And to have that humility to go before the Father and allow him to bring those walls down and bring that healing and that peace, that shalom, right? The Hebrew, just the word shalom, you were talking about the letter bait
mm-hmm.
in Bereshit and how it's a house. And in the word shalom, it's shin, lamed, vav, is it vav? Yeah, vav, mem, shalom. And, or maybe it's a yod. Did I miss that? Is it a yod or a vav for shalom?
Shalom.
I don't know. I'd have to look
Shalom.
it up.
I can't remember now, but it's basically the Hebrew letters. The shin is
Shin Lamed
like
Mem,
the teeth.
maybe Shin Lamed Med. Shin Lamed
Lamed
Mem, maybe. There might be a vav in there though. I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
There's a yod or a vav there, in between the lamed and the mem.
Yeah.
But it basically means, if you took those letters, shin is the teeth. It means to consume or destroy. The lamed is like the shepherd's staff, which means like authority.
Yeah, it's Shin
the
Lamed
vav,
Vav Mem.
yeah,
It's
vav,
vav.
which is the tent peg, right, the nail,
Right.
which means like or it's like a connecting letter. And then mem, which is like vav. Thank you. Mem, which is like water, right? And it can represent like even the flood waters, which are meant to destroy. And so shalom, which we all know is peace, can be hyper literally translated as to destroy the authority of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to come against the enemy and to bring that shalom, that true peace, to destroy the authority of chaos in your life, and to know the Father has your back, and to pray for those who have hurt you and those that you felt rejected and betrayed by, and to know when and to discern who is going to truly be your brother, and who you're just going to have to part ways with, or at least fellowship with at a one arm's distance from, because they're not willing to have that relationship with you because of a difference of opinion. But to find those people, those brothers, like I have with here in Jake, and fellowshipping together. Well, we don't disagree on that one big topic that most people get angry about, but I do have those friends here in Jacob's tent, and I don't try and make it a point of contention, and we fellowship together, and are able to be that light and try and be that picture of that unity that I think Yeshua talked about when he said, "Father, may they be one as you and I and I are one."
Yeah, good stuff, man. For those who are wondering where he came up with some of that, let me switch over here. I've tried to put this on every page, I think, but it's on this week's study page. At the very bottom of the weekly studies, I have the Hebrew letter chart. This is a letter chart put out by for His Glory Ministries. And so you look at Shin would be, each letter has a meaning. So like destroy would be one of them. Lamed, the authority, would be one of them. Vav would be man, would be one of them. And Mem, one of them would be chaos. So you can see like Shalom is destroying the authority of man's chaos. Would be one way you could look at it. Of course, there's lots of other derivatives you could probably come up with there, but in context of what Shalom is, being peace, that's certainly one definition that would, letter definition phrase that would fit. That Shalom brings peace to the chaos of man. It would be one way to look at it. So that's available on the study page there. We still got about a half hour or so left. It's only one chapter this week that we have to go over, which is chapter 25 and like one or two verses of 26. 2 verses looks like a 20. The second verse in 26 is keep my Sabbath and reverence my sanctuary. I am Yeshua. Did you guys have thoughts on chapter 25?
Yeah, I'm fascinated, or hyper fascinated about the whole Sabbath years and the Jubilee cycles. Because I don't know, Rob, have you ever stumbled across the Jubilee cycle period of Joseph Dormund?
Dumond.
Or Dumond?
Dumond, yeah.
Dumond, I think?
Yeah, I have one of his books here somewhere. I'm familiar with it.
60 Days of Hell or whatever. Yeah. I stumbled across some of his research in the past year or so, and his Jubilee kind of timeline is almost 80% convinced me, 80-90% convinced me he's figured out when the actual historical Jubilees were. And the significance of that would be that he's able to place throughout the biblical timeline, if we can get an timeline based on the ages of the patriarchs and stuff, of when they lived during their individual Jubilee cycles that they were alive during.
Yeah.
And he's found some interesting connections between plagues and world events that happen at certain points during the Jubilee cycles, and how we can look at the patterns that happened in the past and look at the patterns that are playing out now. He's got some interesting things. Back in 2015, 2016, he was pointing to 2020 as a significant starting point of significant events. And to my knowledge, he's pretty much been on point with most of his claims or whatever, and he's basing it all based on his Jubilee cycle research. So I wanted to mention that for anybody who likes to kind of do some little bonus searching regarding the Jubilee cycle. I'm just really interested in. I was going to read through verses 35 through 38 based on all the things that we were talking about. And not only does it talk about the year of the release and the Sabbath years, a lot of people don't know that the weekly Sabbath is just a microcosm of larger Sabbaths. You have the yearly Sabbaths, and then you have the once every 7 year Sabbath years.
Yeah.
Right.
And then those all add up to once every 50 years, the Jubilee year. And it's all kind of it makes me wonder how much of that phraseology of a year is, or a day is to 1,000 years for the Lord, and 1,000 years a day. It makes me wonder, how much there is that we can kind of break down with the way that he's formed these Sabbaths that reveal to us how he views time on a grander scale. So that was fascinating, kind of piquing my interest as I was reading through this particular Torah portion. I wanted to read through the verse here, and it kind of tied in with some of the stuff we've talked about already. Is Leviticus 25 verse 35 says, "And when your brother becomes poor, and his hand has failed with you, then you shall strengthen him, and he shall live with you like a stranger or a sojourner. Take no interest from him or profit, but you shall fear your Elohim, and your brother shall live with you. Do not lend him your silver on interest, and do not lend him your food for profit. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to give you the land of Canaan to be your Elohim. And this whole portion here breaks down kind of the biblical perspective of slavery, which is really fascinating considering some of our, the current, political movements in the U.S. are all about kind of like, reparations for harms done in the past under the guise of, man-made slavery. But whenever you read the scripture, a lot of people, they're like, oh, we need to toss this book out because this condones slavery. But when you really read the biblical mandate and explanation for what it calls slavery, it actually says to treat them as a hired servant, and to treat them well, and to give them their year of release as well. If somebody was so poor that they had to sell themselves into servitude, to not only give them, fair wages and to take care of them, but also to let them go free. And so this biblical model of debt and slavery and indentured servitude, it's so fascinating to me to see what that would look like in a real world application, because it's almost like our system currently is an ungodly fiat debt currency system that is based on unlimited debt that just builds and builds and builds. And while you might not think you're a slave, if you are indebted to a bank or to your creditors, in a way you're slave to them, because they are going to keep coming after you. You have to keep making your payments, and if you don't make your payments, they're going to come and try to repo your stuff. And there's even aspects of being indebted and to the government that'll land you in jail if you don't pay your taxes. Eventually, they're coming after you. Watch out. So, just to see how this model of financial debt forgiveness, of a proper indenture servitude, not man-made, twisted, evil slavery, but the system that somebody who's so poor that they needed to earn money by selling themselves into servitude to pay, for their home and their family. How all of this would operate in a real world sense is really interesting to me, because we know that eventually Yeshua is going to rule and reign from Mount Zion over all the earth. And it makes me wonder how much of these premises are going to come into play. And I think we all agree here that probably all of it is going to come into play in some form or fashion. But I find it really interesting that the cities, it specifically says that those who live in the cities, if they sell their house, and they're not a Levite, but they sell their house, that house would, after 1 year, become the sole property of whoever they sold it to, and it would not return on the year of Jubilee. However, it then goes on to talk about how those who live in unwalled villages in the land that they grew crops or whatever, those were not to be considered as the same as houses that were in cities. And those houses would actually return when the year of Jubilee came, and it would return to the family who their inheritance, they would get it back. And just to kind of wrap up some thoughts, maybe Jeff, you can share some thoughts on this, topic or whatever. But my last thought is that you see constantly talked about in this Torah portion, in this chapter, that if somebody had to sell to the foreigner, if somebody had to sell their inheritance, that it was like encouraged that their brother, their cousin, their uncle, their family should go and try to redeem what they had sold. And if it couldn't be redeemed, then it would be returned on the year Jubilee. But it shows me kind of a spiritual principle of covering one another's shame and stepping in and taking over whenever your bro, he can't afford it and he had to sell out to somebody else, that the family the brothers are to come in and redeem, so that it's not being put outside of the family, and it's just such this beautiful principle that I wish our Westerner families and family units could realize that we totally have the understanding of inheritance and heritage torn from by our current system and by the way that we're taught to go spread all across and create little empires for yourself, but make sure to move 4 or 5 states away from your family, because then what happens is we become weak as a culture, as a family unit, and we have to spend all the resources and time and energy to build our own little kingdoms isolated from our families. But whenever you look at cultures like in the Philippines where I grew up, or in South America, or the Jewish community, they banded together and they covered for one another, and they would step in, and the grandparents would watch the children as the working class adults would go out and earn the income, and then they would help each other to get a step up, and the whole community would come together to better the community. And I get that whole impression out of this whole Torah portion, is that a lot of these principles are going to be applied under the rule of the Messiah in the future. And to understand that we can start walking out and thinking in this way now, to want to keep the family plot in with the family, and to want to grow the inheritance and invest in the family, rather than saying, oh, you're on your own, take care of yourself, you do your own thing, we'll do our thing, which is what the Western kind of culture has taught us, is get out from the thumb of mom and dad and stick them in the old person place whenever they're older, right? That's what we're being kind of taught in today's world. But man, how much it has weakened our culture, our heritage, our inheritance, and how much this Torah portion really helps explain kind of the principle of redeeming, when you see somebody kind of falling short or being broke and poor or out of luck. That's the time that we can show that we are Torah observant, and we do believe in the God that can provide, and we demonstrate His compassion and His generosity by applying that to how we treat other people.
Yeah, good stuff, man. And there was something I wanted to address in there, because you're right that especially in today's whacked out political environment and certain movements out there and stuff like that, we'll try to look at something like Leviticus 25 and see slavery, right? But if you actually read it, it's a very different type of slavery that is described. We hear the word slave and we think roots, we think what happened here in the United States, prior to the Civil War and stuff like that. That's not biblical slavery. That's Canaanite slavery. Canaanite slavery, even the word Canaanite means trafficker. It's human trafficking. It's kidnapping. It's taking somebody by force away from their family and friends and their homeland, and then forcing them into bad situations of labor and abuse and like that. That's Canaanite slavery. Biblical slavery, if we use the word slavery, it's really more like indentured servitude. It is way different, certainly in Leviticus 25. But I've got something actually on this week's study page that deals with this. It's right here. Let me enlarge this. On this week's study page, you got a section here because this says, was the American or modern slavery justified by Leviticus 25? No. Biblical slavery looked nothing like the slavery most of us are familiar with, especially when you consider what the Torah says concerning kidnapping, which was how most slaves were acquired around the world by the nations, and even to this day, human trafficking still exists. What does the Bible have to say about that? Exodus 21:16. Kidnappers must be put to death. Kidnappers must be put to death, whether they are caught in possession of their victims or have already sold them as slaves. So, if anyone acquired a slave through kidnapping, they would have been put to death according to the Torah. No, American slavery is not justified by the Torah. Sorry for those of you out there who try to say that, but you're wrong. You're just showing how ignorant you are to the facts of Scripture. So I did want to bring that up because it's one of those things that certainly becomes a hot button, especially in today's political environment, when it comes to things like what we're doing here, the Torah.
You know, I just was reminded of, Joseph's story, and there's so many parallels with Joseph and Yeshua. And just reading that reminded me that his brothers, effectively kidnapped him and sold him into slavery.
Yeah.
And so, according to the Torah, they were, guilty, and it would have been just to put them to death.
Well, but actually, if you read the Joshua account, he went from the Midianites took him out, and the Midianites sold him to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites, I think, sold him back to the Midianites or something, and then it was the Midianites that sold him into. So their intent was to do that, but they didn't actually physically do it. Well, they intended to kill him. Then they had this whole dialogue. Well, let's put him in. Maybe we can sell him, but ultimately they didn't actually physically do it, even though that was the intent of their heart. If you read in like the expanded Joshua account, they didn't actually physically do it. So that may be why they were spared of this judgment, in my opinion.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, regardless, Joseph's treatment of them, and that the grace and the mercy and compassion he had on them when he was second in command after Pharaoh, he could have easily just squashed them. Mm-hmm. I was just reminded of that picture, even more reinforced, of him being likened unto Messiah. But to kind of tack on to what Jake was talking about with Leviticus 25 there, obviously, on a grand scale, it shows me that the Father is not a proponent of monopolies and people just owning everything, and basically forcing people to become debtors and to have to get a mortgage to buy a house and all that. So our current system, if people wondering why it's such, especially in 2021, it's the housing market's crazy. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why it's so crazy and why it's such a headache. It's because it's not the way it's supposed to be. But on a practical level and how we can apply this, I definitely feel like what the Father is doing now in 2021 and has been doing the past 10, 20, 30 years is bringing all these people back, right? Removing the scales from their eyes, taking them and plucking them out of idolatry, and bringing them into the fullness of truth and what it means to worship Him in spirit and in truth. But it's going to be messy, and it has been messy, right? And but it's started to kind of, we've come together, and especially with the internet, we've had the ability to have conversations like this, and sharpen one another and share wisdom and things in the scriptures that the Father's showing us, so that we can build a community, yes, locally, but also internationally, worldwide. I almost said globally.
Old habits.
But to have that kind of network where we can really start to build on what He's doing, and in a sense, kind of how He gave them the instructions for the tabernacle, right? To they all had their parts, and they all had to come together and build that. And I'm not saying we're going to build a tabernacle, but to kind of like a what's the word I'm looking for? To what does it actually mean to walk this Torah stuff out, especially without a temple and in the wilderness, and to kind of have these discussions and learn together each week in the Torah portions, and for the past year, past couple decades, I know a lot of people there have been people doing this for a long time, but there's people that are brand new and they're just starting, and it's starting to kind of come together. And I'm also reminded of Ezekiel 36, or was it 37, with the dry bones and the sinews and everything. It was a process. It didn't just all of a sudden become a full person from the dry bones. You saw the tissues starting to come together, and then the muscles, and then the organs, and then the flesh. And I think watching that happen over time will be kind of grotesque. It would be messy, almost like a like a zombie. This like shifting, like rambling, like, whoa, this gross looking thing that's kind of like, what is that? Until it finally comes together and it's polished, and we have the house of Israel. It's more defined, and it's more you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're not going to see this. Maybe our kids, maybe my kids, maybe Jake. I got a baby on the way. My wife's 13 weeks, and Jake's got Aliyah, and we want to have a lot of kids, and I'm sure you guys want to have a lot of kids. Maybe our kids will see it. Maybe our grandkids will see it. Where it's that more polished. Whether it's millions of people, or even just still crowds of hundreds or thousands. But it's true, and it's pure and undefiled. And that's kind of what I see the Father doing in this day. Whether it's in preparation for a very soon in our day, or in our children's day coming, or return of Messiah, or if we're in this for the long haul and he's not coming for another several hundred years, or I don't know. But I do think his word does not return back to him void. And what he's doing, like, you can't mistake, you can't deny and sweep under the rug what he's been doing over the past even 5 years, let alone 10, 20, 30 years. So many people have at least heard of Torah and keeping the Sabbath and all this stuff, and it's gaining attention. Whether people agree with it or not, it's a thing, and it's exploding, and it's grassroots. It's not like, oh, this is Rob Skiba's thing, or this is it's not. No one person can claim, like you have, like, what was it, Joseph Smith, or what was the guy who started the Mormon church? Yeah, like that was his thing, right? This isn't like a one man's thing. This is a truth thing, and so connecting it back to Leviticus 25, I think the importance of having those local communities where, like, it is my dream that my children grow up and they live near my wife and I, relatively at least. Maybe some will move or go somewhere if the Father is doing something in their lives, but for the most part we live close. And so, yeah, like Jake was talking about, when I'm a grandfather, I can be there to help watch my grandchildren while my children go to work, and that cycle feeds itself, and we have these communities where we stay, we plant deep roots, and we stay for the most part in one place and are able to be established, as opposed to this very shifting and like transformative culture we have, where people are they don't even talk to their family of origin anymore for whatever reason.
Or we'll all end up like Abraham or Jacob, like roaming families of hundreds of people moving from town to town, leaving nothing in our way.
Yeah.
And that's what the armies of that Ezekiel chapter is like. They were locusts that covered the face of the earth and left destruction in their wake. But either a single place or a mobile situation.
A mobile, yeah. Either
but all together.
But all together, right? And the importance of having that. Whether you're nomadic or in one place, but your family is together, and to plant those spiritual roots into your family, into your children, into your grandchildren, so that there's a reason why we read the Torah portion every week. There's a reason why we, at the end of the year, go back to Genesis 1 and start it over, there's a reason why the Father, says things like, remember, throughout your generations, perpetually, everlasting. It's He wants to continuously remind us. It's why we wear our seat every day, to look at it and to be a reminder. We constantly have to go over these things to impress it upon us. The Shema, right? Impress it upon your children, so that it will last. Because that's why we see so many people, in Jake and our generation, who are raised going to church on Sundays for years, and then once they get college age, they just ditch it because those roots they're not firmly planted in them, and they just kind of whatever. And then the world comes in and deceives them, and they start following the agenda. But if we have those, and we see it a lot, so many families in this community are homeschooling and doing, they're more mindful and doing their research of how to raise their families and how to take care of your health and eating properly and all that stuff, so that we can, pass it on and not let this die out. Because, this isn't just some revival conference where we all get hyped up for a weekend and then forget about it 3 weeks from now. This is a lifestyle thing that I'm gonna die doing this stuff, and I'm hoping my children and grandchildren will die doing this stuff. Like, it's not just a spur of the moment emotional, thing.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. We got about 10 minutes left of the broadcast. I saw that Juan Carlos has joined us in the chat room, but he said, you guys just go ahead, you're on a roll. So any final thoughts in the next 10 minutes or so on this week's Torah portion, or anything from the Haftorah, the prophets in the New Testament?
Yeah, I've been on this kind of curiosity trail following Jeremiah the prophet after the Babylonians came, and of course our Haftorah portion discusses his mandate to go and to buy some land, despite knowing that the Chaldeans were going to come in and take over Jerusalem. And of course, it's believed that Jeremiah is the one who went in and took all of the precious things from the holy place and hid them, so that when the Babylonians came in and took the things from the temple, they weren't able to get the Ark of the Covenant and the holy, the table, all the places in the holy place, the showbread table, and I actually read some portions in Maccabees that actually further details what was preserved from the Babylonians before they came in. And among those things was listed the clothes of the priests, so the priestly garments were saved. Also, the instruments for the construction of the tabernacle. It mentions the tabernacle parts were saved by Jeremiah as well, along with the Ark of the Covenant. And so there was there was something, we had this amazing discussion regarding kind of this, and some of the theories is that this property that Jeremiah the prophet was told to buy from the Most High in our Haftorah portion, that could be the location that he buried these things. But I've also been wondering if there's any connection we can make with a preservation of these items and the actual location of Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia. And there's some interesting, I can't off the top of my head kind of just say all the things that I've been kind of discussing and going over with some friends, but the premise being that could all of these things be kept for a very special period of time where they will be revealed once again, and the reason it's significant and makes me like scratch my head like there's something to this is it says that these things were preserved so that they wouldn't be taken over by the foreign nations, and that they were going to be kept for a very special purpose and time to be revealed in the last days. And even in Jeremiah, there's a comment that whenever the temple, when the Most High is here, people will not visit the Ark of the Covenant, nor will they speak of it anymore. And in the phraseology, it makes it seem like, yes, the Ark of the Covenant will be revealed, we'll know where it is, but we're going to be so focused on Yeshua that we're not going to go and even visit the Ark anymore. But,
Right.
Things like that kind of point to me that there could be a time coming soon that those things are revealed. And what if another tabernacle was made in a desert? And what if those priestly garments were revealed, and that was tied to when Yeshua chooses new Levites?
Wow.
When it talks about in Leviticus chapter 44 that he chooses new priests and Levites to carry out his ways, and so I've been fascinated about that particular tie-in to our half Torah portion, it's interesting because you have some tourist opportunities are opening up for the real Mount Sinai location, and I can't help but have that like Indiana Jones tug in my heart going, hey man, what if you turned over a rock and found a cave or something? So I want to go explore those mountain ranges. But anyways, so the question is where did Jeremiah put these things? But the whole premise of our half Torah portion that talks about Jeremiah being told to go and purchase this plot of land, despite knowing the Babylonians were about to come over and take over the whole land, is to show, which is tied to our Torah portion, that the Most High was going to restore this plot of land despite sending his children into captivity. And it reminded me of the story that you find in Jasher, actually, of where he took a clay tablet, like a deed to the land, and they had one that was given to Baruch, his scribe, who also wrote the prophetic books of 1st and 2nd Baruch, but they put one in a sealed clay pot or something. And it reminded me of the event that happened when Jacob was brought to be, I believe Jacob was going to be buried by the sons of by his sons, and Joseph and all of Egypt came up to bury Jacob in the cave of Machpelah, I believe it was, with where basically Esau shows up, and he's like, well, this is my place, this is this is my inheritance. And you read earlier that Jacob got that particular part of the inheritance, and Esau got his own, kind of stuff, but Jacob claimed the land and gave all the wealth to Esau, and then Esau actually died by trying to challenge it, that he actually owned that cave and that plot. And the way that it was proven that Jacob, it was actually his, portion of land, was they had this deed, and they had to have Asher run and deliver the message. It was just this whole, crazy thing. But it reminds me of this particular half-Torah portion, and I kind of wonder if at some point that, clay pot with Jeremiah's property, his land, will ever be, uncovered or revealed, because it says that it was to be, preserved for a very long time, and it has the deed of Jeremiah the prophet when he bought. So,
wow.
I wonder if, whether that's the location where these artifacts are buried, or whether just clay pot itself will ever be uncovered and validate that Jeremiah bought that land at that time, and that's his portion in the, in the heavenly kingdom, right? It's just very interesting that, that's how they would verify ancient land deeds and contracts.
Yeah, have you ever read or heard anything about the Copper Scroll?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It points to some places, isn't it down near, it's around where the the Dead Sea Caves were, I think it was.
Yeah.
But that.
I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I had an audio book on it somewhere. It was pretty fascinating, but it was kind of along the same lines. It's like it led to a great treasure hunt to go find, the stuff hidden by. I think it was, if I remember it right, that it was about the finding the hiding place that Jeremiah put everything. Yeah, I don't know, man.
It's somewhere out there.
Yeah, some pretty wild stuff. Well, that's pretty much that's it. Unless you got any final thoughts, we're just about the top of the hour. Any concluding thoughts you want to share, or you guys get it all out?
That's good for me.
Go home, read your Bible. Sorry, Zach Bauer.
What's up, Zach? Yeah, that's funny. Let me look up you guys' song here. I should have that just quickly saved, but from Parable of the Vineyard and Jake. All right, I got here we go.
יברכך יחוה וישמרך יאר יחוה פניו לך וחונקה יישא יחוה פניו לך לך שלום יישא יחוה פניו לך ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
So good. So good. I love that song, man. You guys really did an awesome job with that, Jake. Really, really good stuff. They were asking me in the chat room again for the link. What's that? Whoop.
Yeah, hallelujah.
Uh-oh. Something's, I don't know where it's coming from. Hang on a second. Oh, it just went ahead to the next playlist. Yeah, good stuff. Let me put a link to the Discord thing once again here. Stand by. People are asking me about that. Copy the link, put that in the chat room so I don't forget this time. All right, very good. Well, really good show, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Good to see you again, Jeff. Say hi to your dad for me if you would, and to everybody else there that might be familiar with my work. Tell them I said hi, including some of those.
Good to see you, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, Shabbat Shalom, and we will see everybody back next week. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.